what are the 21st or what are 21st century skills? Deborah, let me get your thoughts first.
Well, first of all, let me say that we're just giving our best estimate of what the 21st century skills are going to be, because in fact, there's quite a bit of time left in this century. And so one of the things we have to think about is flexibility and trying to anticipate the future and preparing our kids for a future that we really don't even know and can barely imagine, science fiction notwithstanding, Anyway, thinking critically, we hear discerning truth from fiction, something which is more important now probably than we've ever seen, especially with AI emerging so strongly on the scene. Things like managing time well and planning and setting goals and collaborating with others, listening and respecting others. One of the big ones is learning from mistakes. And one of the things we really try to talk about is failing can actually be winning, because if you think about what we're trying to do as learners, if we learn from our mistakes or learn from our failures, then in fact, if the goal is learning, then the mistakes and failures help us in that learning process. And that's so different from the kind of rote memorization that we sometimes encounter in educational systems. One of the things we have often said is that, kids will get these from home, and they'll get these, through extracurricular activities. They'll get them from their community organizations or from church activities. But it's in school where they'll really refine and hone, and school should be a place that really promotes these through learning activities, that are really meaningful. Kids have to learn how to filter out the noise, have to learn how to check their sources and test ideas, look for inconsistencies, and to actually trust their creative instincts. I don't know, Joe, do you want to?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, Deborah, but I would add a few more things.
Sure.
I think the big skill in life is to learn how to form your own identity, and yet also be part of a group, and how to work with a group, but also how to code switch, how to go from one group to the other. That's a skill. And because of the new technology that we have, it's very easy to be manipulated and to be moved around. So having a sense of solidity as to who you are and who you want to be is increasingly important. And that plays out not just on the job, but in personal relationships. Yeah. Whether it's your boy or your girlfriend or your partner or whatever, learning how to work with other people and being yourself, learning who you are, I think is a huge lifelong learning process.
So I'm curious, if I had asked you this question 5 years ago, what are 21st century skills? Would your answers be the same as they are just now?
I think we've become even more committed and more intensely driven by the need for these skills. I think what Joe added to this, first of all, AI has just, come in much faster, I think, than most people anticipated it would. And so that's certainly a factor. But I think socially, when we think about the kinds of things that Joe was talking about, that's evolved in the last 5 years, I think.
And for me personally, a lot of this has been driven or developed or stimulated by writing this book. It took 14 years to write it. And the first part of the book deals with the history of the United States over 400 years, as told through the lens of education and as told through the lens of 5 lifetimes. And for me, it made me realize that this country is still becoming, and it has challenges of who it is and how do we deal with diversity, which is increasingly a reality. It's no longer white Protestant, it's a much more diverse. So the challenge for me is, how do you live in a society where you treat other peoples equally, and not so that one group is assimilated and absorbed into the dominant group? And that to me is a huge shift right now in the country. Right now, more kids are under the age of 18 are from minority groups than from the dominant white. And it's going to continue that way. So we have to come to a moment of truth as to who we are, and are we going to accept, and not only accept, but embrace our differences, and at the same time recognize what unites us, or what should unite us.
I'm sorry. I would agree. I'm not an expert in 21st century skills. However, I would imagine with the advancement of technology and everything else. And I love, Joe, how you brought up, just the fact that our demographics are look different 5 years ago. And I think all of those things together makes a lot of sense. So let's talk about how do we help students get those skills? Because we're considering, future generations. They might end up becoming leaders down the road. They might end up being CEOs or entrepreneurs and all these different things. So how do we support our students and help them get those skills? Joe, I want to get your take first.
We have to think about the purpose of schooling first. What is the purpose of schooling? Because what it is right now was created 40 years ago when the Nation at Risk report came out, and which is the dominant paradigm that we have right now in this country. And that paradigm was basically, we have to compete against Japan and Germany because we're in a global economy and we need to get everybody into college and career success. That became the overriding purpose. But now we're in a different era.